Hello viewers, it's indeed a great pleasure for me to bring to you another program in the Teleschool Junior Series. The subject today is graphs. Graphs are very useful to represent data. Whenever we carry out a survey, we collect lots of data. In order to have useful information from the data, we use graphs. Let's take a very simple example of a survey which you can carry out. So, when we carry out the survey, we'll have data. We summarize the data using graphs. Suppose that we have a group of 45 boys and we ask them to name their favorite sport. Each pupil has to choose only one sport activity from athletics, basketball, football and volleyball. The choices of the 45 boys were noted as follows. The first one said that he preferred football, the second one volleyball, and we have listed down all the 45 choices. Definitely, it is very difficult to make sense out of this set of choices. So the first way to represent this information would be to use a table. Let's see. The table contains two rows. The first row describes the quantity about which data is collected. Here, favorite sport. In the first row, we write all the categories of the quantity. Here, there were 4 categories: athletics, basketball, football, and volleyball. In the second row of the table, we write number of responses in each category. For example, there were 6 boys who chose basketball. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Similarly, there were 13 who chose athletics, 18 who chose football, and 8 chose volleyball. Clearly from the table, we can easily deduce that the most favorite sport is football because it has highest number of responses. The least favorite sport is basketball. So a table contains 2 rows. The top row always represents the quantity about which data is collected, and the second row the number of responses in each category. Another useful way to represent data is to use pictograms. As its name suggests, pictures will be used. So a pictogram essentially contains 2 columns. The first column represents the categories of the quantity about which we collect data. Here, favorite sport. It had 4 categories. And the second column contains the number of responses. Pictures are used to represent number of responses. For example, this picture represents 2 boys. Half of the picture is used to represent 1 boy. We found that there were 6 boys who chose basketball. So it is represented by 3 pictures. 2 boys plus 2 boys plus 2 boys, 6 boys. So we use 3 such pictures to represent number of responses in the category basketball. As you may notice that pictograms are quite difficult to draw. That's why they are not popular. Another very popular method to represent data is bar chart. A bar chart consists of a horizontal axis which represents the categories of the quantity about which data is collected. So remember, the horizontal axis in a bar chart represents the number of categories about which data is collected. A vertical axis in the bar chart represents number of responses in the category. 1 bar is used to represent 1 category. If there are 4 bars, then it means that we have 4 categories. To represent 3 categories, we'll use 3 bars. And the most important thing about a bar chart is the height of a bar chart. The height of a bar chart represents or is equal to the number of responses in that category. So the higher the bar, the more the number of responses in that category. All bars must have the same width and all bars must be equally spaced. Let's now use a bar chart to represent the data that we collected in our survey. So, the horizontal axis represents the quantity about which data is collected. Here, favorite sport. There were 4 categories: athletics, basketball, football, and volleyball. And the height, for example, of the bar representing basketball is 6, because there were 6 boys who chose basketball. And from the bar chart, you can easily deduce that football was the most preferred sport activity, because it is represented by the highest bar. So the height of the bar chart is equal to number of responses. The horizontal axis represents the different categories of the quantity about which you collect data. The vertical axis represents number of responses in each category. It is also very common to draw a bar chart horizontally. That is, to reverse the axis, to represent the quantity about which data is collected vertically, as follows. Here, the quantity about which you collect data is represented vertically, and the categories are shown vertically. There were 4 categories: athletics, basketball, football, and volleyball. And this time, the length of the bar represents the number of responses in that category. For example, there were 6 boys who chose basketball, so the length of the bar is 6 units. So, you can also draw a bar chart horizontally, in which case the length represents the number of responses. Again, all the bars must have the same width and they must be equally spaced. Another very common method to represent data is to use a pie chart. A circle is used to represent a pie chart. The most important thing about a pie chart is that 360 degrees represents total number of responses. Remember, a circle is used to represent a pie chart, and 360 degrees represent total number of responses. A sector of a circle represents one category. So if there are 4 categories, we'll use 4 sectors. If there are 3 categories, you will use 3 sectors of the circle. And the angle of the sector is proportional to the number of responses in that category. The larger the sector, the larger the number of responses in that category. So, a sector of a circle represents one category. The angle of a sector represents number of responses in that category. The larger the sector, the higher the number of responses in that category. Let's represent the result of our survey on a pie chart. Remember, we surveyed 45 boys and we asked them to name their favorite sport. And there were 4 different choices: athletics, football, basketball, and volleyball. So, total number of boys is 45, therefore, total number of responses is 45. It will be represented by 360 degrees. So, what is the angle which will represent athletics? There were 13 boys who chose athletics out of 45. So, in order to calculate the angle, we'll carry out the following calculation. 13, the number of boys choosing athletics, divided by total number of boys, 45, times 360 degrees, which is 104 degrees. Similarly, in order to calculate the angle of the sector, which will represent basketball, we'll take the number of boys who chose basketball, 6, divided by the total number of boys, 45, multiplied by 360 degrees, 48. The angle of the sector representing football, there were 18 boys who chose football. So, 18 divided by 45 times 360 degrees equal to 144 degrees. Therefore, the angle of the sector representing football will be 144 degrees. Similarly, the angle of the sector representing volleyball is obtained as follows. Number of boys who chose volleyball, 8 divided by total number of boys times 360 degrees, which is 64 degrees. Let's now draw the pie chart. So, as you can see, football is represented by the largest sector because there were largest number of responses, largest number of boys who chose football. So it is represented by 144 degrees. Then athletics, basketball, volleyball. So we calculated the angle of each sector and we draw it accurately in a circle, and this circle will be called the pie chart. So pie charts, bar charts are very common and very popular to represent data. There is another way to represent data, is to use a stacked bar chart. Let's take an example. A number of boys and girls were asked if they could swim. The bar chart below shows how they answered. Now, since it is a bar chart, the horizontal axis represents the categories of the quantity about which data is collected. Here we have two categories, boys and girls. The vertical axis represents number of responses. Now, how many boys were there? This is obtained by the height, 240 boys. How many girls were there? 160. How many children answered yes? Yes is represented by the brown color shading. So, the height corresponding to the brown color shading is 240 minus 160, 4 boys. 160 minus 120. Let's write it clearly. We want to know how many answered yes. To know how many answered yes, we calculated the height of the bar corresponding to yes. So, among the boys, the height of the bar is obtained by subtracting 260 from 240. So, the height of the bar is 80, which means 80 boys answered yes. Similarly, for girls, the height corresponding to yes is obtained by subtracting 120 from 160, which is 40, which means 40 girls said yes. So, total number of children who answered yes is 80 plus 40, 120. We can see it again on the stacked bar chart as follows. So, the height of the bar corresponding to yes was 240 minus 160 for boys, and for girls 160 minus 120. And the total number of children asked would be obtained by the sum of the bars representing boy and girl, which is 400. Now we'll look at a very popular graph, the line graph. Line graphs are usually used to represent two different quantities. It consists of two axes, a horizontal axis, which represent the first quantity. We usually refer to it as the x-axis. The vertical axis, which represents quantity 2, which we usually refer to it as the y-axis. The intersection of horizontal and vertical line is represented by a coordinate. Remember, in a coordinate, we'll have the value on the x-axis first. That is the x-coordinate. In fact, since this 1, 2, and 3 is on x-axis, we'll call them x-coordinates. Since these are on the vertical axis or the y-axis, we'll call them y-coordinate. So this point has coordinate 1, 2, because it corresponds to an x coordinate of 1 and a y coordinate of 2. This point has coordinate 3, 2 because it corresponds to an x coordinate of 3 and a y coordinate of 2. So remember, in a line graph, we have coordinates, consist of coordinates, and in a coordinate we write the x coordinate first and then the y coordinate. Let's draw a simple graph. The graph will be used to relate two quantities. The first quantity is number of toys purchased, and the vertical axis is the cost. One toy cost 10 rupees. One toy costs 10 rupees. So we'll represent that by coordinate 110. Two toys cost therefore 20 rupees, so it will be represented by 220. Three toys cost 30, so it will be represented by 330. So we have the following coordinates: 110, this one is 220, and this one is 330. And we have joined them by a straight line. Note that it is very important that you label the axes. Here, the horizontal axis, which represents the first quantity, is number of toys. The vertical axis, which represents the second quantity, represents cost. They should be very clearly labeled. So we have joined all the coordinates by a straight line, and this is called the line graph. We'll take another example. A line graph which will be used to convert pound sterling into rupees. There are two quantities here. The first quantity is the number of pounds that you will obtain, and the vertical axis represents number of rupees, and the graph relates number of rupees and number of pounds. So 1 pound, in 1 pound you will obtain 40 rupees. For 2 pounds you will obtain 80 rupees. How many rupees you will get for 3 pounds? So we'll draw a line corresponding to 3 pounds here, a vertical line, and then a horizontal line, which is 120. So 3 pounds corresponds to 120 rupees. That is, this one has coordinates 320. So how many rupees you will get for 3 pounds? 120 rupees. You can also read other coordinates from the graph. For example, this one. It has x coordinate 1 and y coordinate 40. We have drawn this graph for you on a proper graph paper as follows. Here, the horizontal axis represents pounds and the vertical axis rupees. And we have drawn the line for you. So every coordinates represent the relationship between the number of pounds and rupees. For example, 140. 1 pound corresponding to 40 rupees. 3 pounds corresponding to 120 rupees. So you can draw such graphs for problems which occur in your everyday life. For example, the cost of any object that you use to buy. You can find the cost of 2, 3, 4 and then plot them. Let's take one example. The pie chart shows the favorite colors of a group of 120 children. Complete the bar chart to represent the same information. Note that on the pie chart we have 4 sectors which represent the 4 colors: red, blue, green and yellow. And on the bar chart, 2 of the colors have been represented, the red and the blue. We are asked to complete the bar chart by using the information on the pie chart. The first thing to do is to calculate the angle for the sector yellow. It will be obtained by taking 360 degrees, the complete turn, subtract from it 105, 60, 75 to obtain 120 degrees. So the sector representing yellow is the largest and therefore will correspond to the highest bar on the bar chart. So how to draw the bars corresponding to yellow and green? Let's see the sector representing the color red. It has an angle of 105 degrees on the pie chart and a height of 35 on the bar chart. So this means that 105 degrees on the pie chart represent 35 children on the bar chart. From this relation, we can find the number of children represented by the sector green and yellow. The sector red was represented by 105 degrees on the pie chart and 35 children on the bar chart. So 1 degree on the pie chart I have divided by 135 on both sides. 1 degree on the pie chart represents 1/3 child on the bar chart. And the sector green had an angle of 75 degrees. Therefore, if 1 degree represents 1/3 child, this means 75 degrees will represent 75 times 1/3, 25 children. The sector yellow, we calculated the angle, it was 120. So 120 degrees would represent 120 times 1/3, 40 children. Therefore, we can complete the bar chart. For green, it has a height of 40, and for yellow it has a height of 40, and for green a height of 25. As you may note that yellow was represented by the largest sector on the pie chart and the highest bar on the bar chart. Let's take a last example. Suppose that we have a group of adults who were asked if they liked mathematics when they were at school. The bar chart shows how many men and women were asked, and the pie chart shows how they answered. So we have a bar chart to represent the number of men and women who were asked. So again, the bar chart shows the categories. The horizontal axis shows the categories. There are 2 categories here, men and women. The height of the bar represents the number in each category. So there are 140 men and 110 women. Now, among the men, 45% said yes, they liked mathematics. 55% said no, they didn't like mathematics when they were at school. Among the women, 60% said yes, they did like mathematics, and 40% said no, they didn't like mathematics. So what is the total? The first question that we have to answer, what is the total number of adults asked? The total number of adults will be obtained by adding the number of men and the number of women asked. So from the bar chart, the total number of men asked was 140. Total number of women asked was 110. Therefore, 140 plus 110 gives the total number of adults asked, which is 250. How many adults answered yes? Number of adults answering yes would be obtained by adding number of men who answered yes and number of women who answered yes. So how many men answered yes? 45%. There were 140 men and 45% of them answered yes. So 45%. 45% of the men, and we had 140 men, so 45% of 140 gives 63. How many women answered yes? 60% of the women answered yes. But there were a total of 110 women. So 60% of 110 women answered yes. 60% of 110 women answered yes, which gives 66. So total number of adults answering yes is 63 plus 66 gives 129. So viewers, we have now reached the end of today's program. We have seen different graphs. The first graph was bar chart. The important thing to remember about a bar chart is that the height of a bar represents a number of responses in a category. One bar will represent only one category. So if you have many categories, then you will need many bars. The second graph that we looked at was pie chart. 360 degrees represent total number of responses on a pie chart. A sector represents one category. So if you need 4 categories, then you will have to draw 4 sectors. And the angle of a sector is proportional to the number of responses in that category. We also saw line graph. Line graph consists of points, and each point has coordinates. Remember that the x coordinate is written first and then the y coordinate. X represents the first quantity and y the second quantity. And we have also seen examples where we use pie charts and bar chart together to have useful information. So thank you for watching us. Should you have any question or suggestion, we invite you to write to us to the Mauritius College of the Air on the following address: Telemail, Teleschool Junior, Mauritius College of the Air, Réduit. Or you can give us a phone call on 403-8200. Or you can also visit our website on the following address: worldwideweb.mcawebcast.org. We would like to thank the production team of the MCA and of course you viewers for your kind attention. Until next time, it's goodbye from us.